for the people, we could find someone else that does.
I remember years ago somebody saying that part of the privilege in our society is not just to vote, but to choose not to vote. And although I'm always distressed when we have municipal elections where we get 15, 20, 25% turnout, and then you go to South Africa and they think it's a bad day when they have 95% turnout, and I think what's happened to our democracy? The choice not to vote for one of the candidates is you make that choice by not going to the polls. And so that's vote on who's on the
Thank you. Mr. Siegler, what concrete proposals do you have for reducing and eliminating gangs in Anchorage? And please exclude any discussion about any more studies or study groups.
Well, gangs are about violence and are about a problem that we face in a society, like we did during Prohibition. Certain substances are illegal, which means that people who have disagreements over how much they buy or sell can't go to some kind of arbitrator because they're engaging in an illegal contract. So I think that's one of the issues that needs to be addressed. The other is a kind of culture of personal responsibility. I know that the chronic inebriates are not part of the gang problem, but they're part of what we in Anchorage allow to go on. Okay.
Thank you.
Time.
That's it?
Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you.
Mr. Trainee, South Central Alaska needs 1,200 megawatts of power. The Fire Island wind turbines will provide about 54 megawatts of power. The Susitna Dam project would produce about 600. With that in mind, should wind and hydro projects receive public funding?
I think so, because we've got to keep the flow of energy coming here. It's like the gas coming out of the North Slope. Do we need to have gas coming down here to South Central? I think all of us that are hooked to natural gas realize we don't want that stopped. I was talking to the mayor of Fairbanks, and he says, we don't have a natural gas problem. We don't have natural gas up here. They use diesel fuel to heat every home out there. Could you imagine if we had to have diesel fuel heat in Anchorage? It would be terrible. So we've got to make sure that every form of energy becomes available to us, whether it's hydropower or the gas coming off the pipeline. It needs to be down here.
Thank you. Mr. Clary, this year East 40th is to be put in from Lake Otis Parkway to Dale Street on Piper and 40th. They say there is going to be a roundabout. I live on East 41st, and I feel that a roundabout would be unsafe and a four-way stop would be safer. What can we do to change the roundabout?
Well, the first thing you got to do is you got to get involved in these projects early. You got to go to community councils. You got to go to the project planning meetings, and it's the way government works. You got to be involved at the early stage of the process to get your comments in and make your voice known and your concerns known. If it's, that particular project I'm not intimately familiar with, so I'm not sure where it is in the stage of planning, but it may be too late already. I don't know. But being involved is the best way to get your voice heard on any of those types of issues.
Thank you. Ms. Boer, very few of us trust our government anymore, and campaign promises seem to be only temporary. What specifically would you do to restore trust in our leaders?
I think when you as an elected official are trying to change something.
Get here. Please stand up.
apologize.
Yeah, that's
I
better.
think when you're trying to change something as an elected official, it has to start with you. So when you're talking about increasing trust in government, I think that would have to start with me. And when I say something, it's about accountability. I believe in personal responsibility. If I tell you one thing, I'm not going to tell someone else the other thing. And it's also about remembering who you represent, because that's all a part of the equation.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, how would you act or do to help the homeless get off the streets?
You know, I feel that the nonprofits have the best response level as far as this. go in as a government and try to fix things. And when we do that, we become separated, a degree of separation from the actual responsibilities of the problem. We're not communally engaged in the problem. And you start saying things like, somebody should do something about it. Nonprofits are engaged, and we should be involved in our nonprofits.
Mr. Honman, do you agree with Ms. Selcraig's vision of community planning? And the question writer says, I know she has endorsed you. I'm assuming she means, does that mean your vision is her vision?
Well, first of all, I don't know if she's endorsed me. She said she'd support me, and I'll take support from anybody. That's what we're doing. I don't think I have the same visions and plans that Ms. Selcraig has. In fact, that's one of the things we discussed when she said she'd support me is that, I'm not a Democrat. So, she said it didn't matter that I was an honest person, that she trusted me. So, my vision of, what did you say, planning? No, I would say that she, with her years of experience and knowledge of planning, I would say no. I don't think that's
Mr. Trombley, do you believe the Anchorage government has a right to control our behavior, i.e. social engineering, and do you support Title 21?
No. How's that for timing?
And we know where you stand.
From this end again, Ms. Losiander, name specifically what you will do as an assembly member to promote conservative fiscal policy for the city.
I supported the compromise budget that came before the assembly, and I believe that it's not appropriate to always go to the tax cap. We need to look and clearly define what governmental responsibilities are. That's what we need to focus on in the next time.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, with every public building that is announced, the administration brags on the number of parking spaces that will be created to accommodate the increased usage. These new parking spaces seem to disappear along the way. What can be done to effectively create real, additional, convenient parking with every new structure?
Is it private buildings or talking about government buildings?
You speak up and the question only says buildings.
Buildings. If it's a government building, then we should look into putting parking garages or etc. But if it's a private building, I don't think you should require or mandate creating the kind of laws that says you will have this kind of parking. I don't think it's the government's responsibility. It's your property, and if you live in the right property, the individual. So if it's your private property, you do it how you want.
Mr. Hall, this is a question about Cunningham Bridge. Has any study been done on a tram from Anchorage to Wasilla? The long-term savings of this for a future for travel growth. And a tram to Alyeska Girdwood. I'm assuming they're talking about alternative transportation to the two different areas.
Well, number one, I want to use this time to answer part of my first question in this one. I have no knowledge of a tram, and I have no idea how you would move enough people on a tram to actually accommodate what we're talking about for the people. I think that Cunningham Bridge, maybe it doesn't make sense today, but neither did the Golden Gate the day they built. What you got to do is really have vision long term, and I think that will make a big difference. You caught me when you asked me about ways to help other people get into homes. I have a real problem with that. I've always believed if you're going to buy a home, you need 20% down, you have to have an equity in that home, and you have to be prepared to meet the payments. So the easier we make it for people to get in homes, the way we end up in the economic crisis we're currently dealing with in the lower 48. So I was taken aback by a way to find easier way for people to get home. I think it needs to be more difficult so they can afford it.
Right. Okay.
It was.
Sorry about that.
Mr. Clayman, is there about $15 million missing from the landfill accounts? And if so,